They were rivals mere weeks ago, but now Senator Ted Cruz receiving the backing of former Governor Jeb Bush. The Bush endorsement adds to the growing list of establishment figures rallying behind Cruz, including his brother Neil Bush, who's on the Finance Committee for Senator Cruz, leaving little doubt who they want as candidate for president. But Donald Trump's lead in delegates is formidable, and Trump only widened the lead after last night's elections. Joining us now, former Republican presidential candidate, retired neurosurgeon. That just sounds so funny to me because I will always think of him first and foremost as an incredible neurosurgeon, Dr. Ben Carson. He endorsed Donald Trump earlier this month, and we are delighted to have you with us.
Well, thank you, Lou. It's always good to be on your show.
Let's turn to the tone of this this debate, whatever you want to call it, presidential dialogue. I was offended by Paul Ryan trying to play arbiter for the Republican Party. I thought he was insinuating, he was using innuendo, he was being oblique when a man should be straightforward if he's got something to say, in my judgment. What is your reaction?
Well, my reaction in general is that this is such an incredibly important election that the candidates should be talking about what is it that distinguishes them from others. Mm-hmm. What is their policy? You know, as I was in the process early on, it was so hard to get anybody to talk about policy. They just wanted to talk about each other.
It didn't get any better later, did it?
And you know, the level of maturity that is manifested, or lack of maturity, is really quite appalling when you consider the kinds of problems that we're facing in our country right now. Does anyone talk about the fiscal gap?
Right.
No, most people have no idea what you're even talking about.
In all seriousness, Donald Trump has spent more time talking about $19 trillion than any other candidate outside of one who has since withdrawn from the field.
That's true, and I did try to stick to the issues, and you see where it got me. So,
well, what's that old saying? You know, that if you can't give a very good sermon if you don't keep them in the pews. And it's a very delicate balance. I mean, I commiserate with you in what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
And I find
we've reached the Roman Colosseum stage, where Rome is burning and nobody cares. Let's just go to the Colosseum and let's see the gladiators fight and let's see the tigers tear people apart. Yeah. You know, this is where we are today.
Yeah, I resist that because I think that certainly the analog with the Roman Empire is altogether too apt. But I also see men like yourself. Donald Trump is the only person in this thing who will be taking a pay cut if he wins.
Right.
He's now the only person who is not a career politician in the field.
Yeah, and I've had a chance.
That speaks
it does.
highly of...
I've had a chance to sit down and have a heart-to-heart conversation with him. And he really does care about America. He really does want us to be successful. And he also wants to be successful. He wants to be a successful president. So he's not going to be doing crazy stuff, believe me.
Yeah.
He's going to surround himself with people who really know how to get things done. And he's not going to try to micromanage everything. If you think about it, the Trump empire is huge.
Right.
And it's very successful, and there are a lot of people involved. And believe me, he doesn't micromanage them. And I've had a chance to talk to a lot of his employees and former employees. It's very hard to find anybody who has anything bad to say about him. That tells you a lot. You look at his children and how well they manage. Yeah. It tells you a lot about a person.
His family is a wonderful badge for him. I couldn't agree with you more. And each of them seems so talented and responsible and right in lockstep with their father.
Right. One of the other things about Donald Trump, which most people don't know, and he doesn't brag about it, but you know, in the early 90s when he came down to Palm Beach, you know, many of the private clubs did not treat Jews and blacks appropriately. Mm-hmm. Donald Trump was a real warrior on behalf of the blacks and the Jews to open that situation up.
Yeah, he's a fascinating fellow. You got lots of fascinating folks in this race. Your sense as to his, first of all, I wanted to comment about one thing, calling Jeb Bush low energy early on. It was an interesting thing to do. It was devastating to Jeb Bush, I'm sure, but it also reminded you of how much energy Donald Trump has. I mean, you guys are working 24/7.
Yeah.
It's
I can tell you, I don't think most people have any concept of what it takes.
Yeah.
You know, getting up early every morning, going to bed late every night, sometimes 2 or 3 states in one day,
now,
all kinds of rallies.
I hear vice presidents don't have to work as hard. Any interest?
My interest really is saving America for the next generation. You know, my whole career was about, you know, the children. That's what I'm about now. And I don't require a fancy title or position in order to do that. But, you know, Donald Trump and I have talked about our mutual desire to save this country for the next generation, and we have agreed that we will work together to do that.
Well, let me just say, thank God the country's got folks like you. Appreciate it. Dr. Ben Carson.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Be sure to vote in our poll tonight. Do you think it's a good idea for the country to be led again? Now, this is we're just having fun, by a Clinton or a first-term senator endorsed by the Bush family. We're just asking. But we do want to hear from you. Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs News. A driver in Canada. Let's go to the video. You got to admire that setup. A driver in Canada proving that just because you can afford a fancy sports car doesn't necessarily mean you should be driving one. Whoa! The driver you see there is having more than, that is a fancy car. My God, what's he got going now? What is that, a tire? He took off full speed and fishtailed almost immediately, which takes a certain amount of, well, whatever. The car continued to swerve down the road and over the median before eventually losing that tire. We're not going to tell you the driver's name. There's just no point in that. But Porsche, I understand, is asking him to return the car. Up next, billionaire investor Wilbur Ross previously backed Jeb Bush for president. He's my guest here next, and he says Republicans should now get on the Trump train. Wilbur Ross joins me. We're going to talk politics, markets, and economies. Stay with us. We'll be right back.